To the Teacher Mentor podcast. My name is Hugh Herndon, and I've been teaching high school English for over 10 years now. And throughout the time, I have seen a lot of changes to the profession, some good and some not so good. After having taught hundreds of courses and thousands of students, I began to see the need to have an honest conversation with the various stakeholders about the obstacles facing the public education system. Every teacher thinks about writing a book, the tell-all expose that reveals the ugly truth, but the reality is we know a lot of the truth already. Some teachers want to write the next great instructional strategies book, the key to success with some demographic or with some approach, and that's great for them. I'm not that guy. You're not going to be able to get a master's degree in Herndon's ideology like some of the other gurus. No, I wanted to have a specific focus for the podcast. First, I wanted to elevate and begin to reestablish the professional validity of the teacher. I think that's why the concept for Filthy Rich came to me first, because it is a personal struggle. How do I validate my career when it is often so invalidated outside of my control? My salary, the test designed to determine my effectiveness, the district or state goals for my profession. Filthy Rich represented the first goal of this podcast, restore the dignity of the profession. Yes, I know it is easy to take shots at the profession of education, but what career is immune from criticism? However, with teaching, it is different. Everyone can do it, it seems. Everyone has an opinion on how it should be done. Some argue you don't need a degree, that schools have no purpose in the 21st century. But would that line of thinking apply to other professions? I mean, technically, you can represent yourself as your own legal counsel. But what did Abraham Lincoln say? The man who represents himself has a fool for a client. Look, at the healthcare system, no one is advising that we abolish hospitals or abandon the concept of Western medicine just because there's a growing push for natural alternative health. Doctors are sued every day. It's easy to find someone in the medical community that poorly represents the whole of the profession, yet no one advocates for the destruction of the entire healthcare system. So why is it so easy to do the same with schools? Schools are ineffective, they say. Well, yes and no. To some degree, measuring a school's effectiveness is like measuring a hospital based on the number of people who are injured or sick. That's the whole point of a hospital, to treat those who are not well. The whole purpose of a school is to treat those who are ignorant, to level up their intelligence. And what do? We look at a school, at a grade, at a test, and say school is ineffective. Those kids didn't pass a test. But what's the solution? Charter schools? Let's see how effective the charter schools are when they have the same students with the same learning struggles as the public schools at the same rate, at the same volume. Homeschool? Not everyone has the luxury to afford that. So again, I ask, why is it so easy to disparage the school system? And what do we as a society get out of doing that? How do we inspire individuals to get into one of the most fundamentally necessary roles when we are constantly belittling and devaluing their role and position? We have to establish the validity and professionalism of this calling as any other industry. Yes, some teachers have made some foolish and poor decisions. Yes, we have enabled and created many of the demons we now find, but tell me, what industry does not have its challenges? Can anyone look at the healthcare, legal, or financial industries and go, now there's a well-run, tight operating system? First, restore the dignity of the profession. That was the goal of Filthy Rich, to remind educators that we are not in it for the financial payout, and that's okay. To remind myself that I am more than my bank account, too. Now, that does not excuse states and counties from raising the bar. I mean, if this is a profession, a true profession, you have to go and get some formal training, there's certification, background checks, retirement options, healthcare, all of that. Right then, we need to pay them accordingly or have a pay structure in place where they can survive off their income. How many lawyers do you know that work at the local grocery store to make ends meet? How many doctors have side hustles because their primary income is not enough? If a teacher is single, can they qualify for rents? Can they buy a house? These are legitimate concerns for this profession. Concerns, but they do not diminish the dignity of the profession. Some of you are parents, all of you at some point were a child, and all of you can remember the bad teachers, but you can remember the good ones too, right? The ones that had the honest conversations, that looked out for you, gave you snacks, gave you extra chances because they knew your home life. They knew you were hungry, that mom and dad were fighting or out of a job. As teachers, we know the content is why you are mandated to be there, but it's more than that. We love the development of character, the ability to speak into life, to encourage, mentor, and watch from the sidelines. If you haven't checked out Filthy Rich, I encourage you to watch, share, and consider the message. The link is in the show notes. We may not be a rich profession like a lawyer or a doctor, but we can have an impact just as significant, and to reduce us to jokes and flippant comments reflects a lack of understanding on society's part, not ours. The second goal of the podcast is to have some honest dialogue about the nature of education. Do we want our children to go to college? Is that the only measure of success that we as a society want for our kids? What does it actually mean to be successful? Is it wealth? Is it being a good citizen, parent, spouse? How do we adequately prepare our students for their life? What is it that Einstein said? Everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. Does education reveal the natural genius, or do we measure students against their ability to climb trees? This is where educators are going to have to be honest with themselves, where we have gone wrong. Where have we exchanged our definition for success at the cost of the student? Are we promoting an ideology that is incompatible with the desires of our students? For those not in the classroom, parents, administrators, students, what is it that we want to get out of education? I have so many students that are disengaged, that have checked out. We have graduation coaches in middle school now. That means that somewhere, someone has identified a 6th, 7th, or 8th grader as unlikely to graduate from where they are currently. How is that possible? How can you have a 6th grader that is so disillusioned? They just don't care about decisions that will impact them their entire life. That's just not on schools or teachers, mom and dad. What conversations are you having? What standards are you setting for them? How are you working with the school system to position your child for greatness? Administrators, how are the policies that you are enforcing equipping a student for success, not just passing them off to some university where they can emerge 5 years later, $80,000 in debt? What are you doing while they are under your leadership to help cultivate understanding? We need to have some honest conversations about education, about college. Is it really right for everyone? Is that a bad thing if they don't go? Or do we add one more tree for our students to climb, and when they fall off the tree of college, judge them less than? I hope that this podcast will inspire teachers why they got into this position, to make a difference. I'm confident that if we can impact teachers, if we can revitalize them at the personal level, then we can make a significant step towards addressing some of the issues in the classroom today. I also know that motivating teachers, reminding them of the potential for true happiness in one of the most impactful places in society, is only half the issue. The other half is to have some serious conversations with parents, with our students, with administrators, and other stakeholders about what is it that we actually want to accomplish. Graduation rates? Okay, let's make sure everyone graduates, everyone gets a trophy. I'm not demeaning a high school diploma. It's significant, but if that's our only measure for success, then it's a low bar. We can fudge the numbers, lower the standards, create a system where failure is removed, but that's not life. The A only has merit because of the F. I've said this for years and people laugh, but it's true. If we talk about success, we have to talk about failure. What is it? Is failure not getting into an Ivy League college, or is failure living a mediocre life of dissatisfaction? And who's responsible? The individual, sure. But what about the system, the institutions that cultivated, defined, and redefined, that changed, shaped, and manipulated the idea of success to the point where it is unrecognizable? Unrecognizable to the student, who should be at the center of all of our efforts. The title of this podcast is twofold. First, it is for educators, a place to be encouraged to have conversations about the nature and purpose of arguably one of the most important roles in society. But it's not just a teacher podcast. It's a teacher mentor podcast because that's what our society needs. We need to have someone to speak into our life, to ask us the why, to ask us to be reflective so that we can grow, learn, succeed at life, not just school. The Teacher Mentor podcast is for everyone because ultimately we are impacted by what happens in the classroom. We all are connected, and it's time that we understood just what is writing on it. If you are an educator or play any role in the school system, then this podcast is for you because here you will be praised, valued, but challenged. You will be asked to refine your philosophies, your understanding, but I promise, if you do, you will grow and find the passion again for the noblest professions. If you aren't in the educational world, this podcast is still for you. It's easy to blame the school system, the unions, the teachers, the administrators to lobby accusations, or maybe you're one of its few defenders, the PTA mom, the parent volunteer, and if you are, thank you. Listen to the podcast, expand your sphere of influence as we discuss topics facing the classroom this year. Grow your knowledge because we need support. We need you. Thanks for listening to this introduction. Normally, our format will be interview-based, and I have some fantastic guests lined up in the weeks ahead. Until next time.